Happy belated New Year for those of you that were not here yesterday. This is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the NBA slate for this evening, which is a very, very big slate. And it's also extremely interesting. There are a couple of bits of injury news that we're still waiting on, as usual. And again, I have to work out the best time to do these types of things, which is why, once again, I'd like to make sure that in these reviews, previews, or whatever, I do provide enough insight that will kind of translate to slate and have this not just be a kind of who to play on this slate type of approach, although that is obviously the main goal of this. For those of you that were here yesterday, it was a really important thing occurred that it actually applies to some of our possible plays today. But yesterday, Giannis ended up going off at 6%. Or anywhere between 6 to 9%, just as depending on where you played and what contest you played. And for those of you that were, present for the review yesterday, it's really important to realize what projections are and how you want to interpret them. In other words, when you're trying to win a GPP, you're in a perfect world going to be able to find upside not only from what people are thinking, but also upside from those projections. And you will recall that we went over it yesterday. Giannis rated as kind of a decent play. And the problem is people were projecting that there would be a blowout. And the thing is, though, is that the projections were based on his minutes of only being about 30 minutes, or actually it was 28 minutes. So the thing that I kind of brought up yesterday was, okay, maybe it's a blowout, but I think that from an upside versus downside perspective, there was certainly more room for upside from that 28 to 29 minute projection than there was downside. And when you're playing GPPs, that's really the way you're going to have to look at things, and that's exactly what happened. Minnesota kept it close. And Giannis ended up playing more minutes, and he ended up scoring 62 points on a shortish slate at about 6% ownership. And we didn't win the tournament or anything like that. We did kind of just okay. But it's a very important lesson that, don't double count things. Don't say, well, it's a blowout, so that's why I'm not going to, it's a decent chance for a blowout. That's why I'm not going to play him. You have to see what's already been factored in to projections and to ownership. I really think people kind of missed the boat on that one yesterday. That, most likely result was that it was going to be a blowout. He would only get 28 minutes, but most likely is not always the story. There was a decent probability or possibility that it would stay close. And if that were the case, giving him that extra 6 minutes is, for a guy like that, is just huge. So interesting result with respect to the way we analyze these things. All right, so enough of that. So today, let's start with the Detroit-LA Clipper game. Because again, I don't like to go from the beginning to end because, I don't want to make sure that none of these games kind of get lost. So first thing is Detroit Clippers. We'll go over some quote-unquote plays and see how they kind of relate to ownership and how we can kind of fit into good GPP lineups. Now, again, the first thing I like to do, as usual, is try to find a game that's going to have a really nice total and have guys project really well and have it be close. And unfortunately, this doesn't fit all of those bills because it is projected to be about a 13-point spread. Now, again, is it always going to be a blowout? No, but when you're looking for that, you want to start with the perfect scenario, and if you don't get it, then you kind of make excuses and make, sacrifices along the way. So the first thing I'll look at is the individual plays. So on the Clipper side, and this is where it gets interesting, there are 4 plays that actually stand out right now as being excellent to good values, and they are all the guys you might imagine. It's going to be Kawhi, it's going to be Paul George, Lou Williams, and Montrezl Harrell, right? And then it's kind of a big drop down to guys like Zubac and guys like that. So all these four guys are projected to be really, really good values. And as a result, they're also projecting to be pretty highly owned. First, and again, this is early ownership runs, but all these guys are looking to be, if not 20%, at least close to it as far as 20% ownership. And on a huge slate, that's a really big deal. And this is where this blowout thing, it does matter. Now, I know what people are saying. You don't want to predict blowouts. No, but you can look at Vegas and realize there's at least a certain probability or possibility that the game does blow out, and in this game more so than others. And then you have to look and see what minutes projection was responsible for these quote-unquote great values that are showing up in 20% ownership. And what I'm looking at, for example, is that Kawhi and Paul George are projected for about 35 minutes. And for me, that's 35 minutes is basically full run for these guys. So, I mean, if you had to ask, is there room for more upside or downside from those minutes, given the possibility that this game could blow out? I would say there's more downside to that than anything, okay? So, you know, are these guys going to be good plays? Yeah, maybe good plays, but I think relative to their ownership, again, in GPPs, I think there's more downside from these projections than upside. Now, again, what you could say is, well, what if somebody from Detroit, you know, really keeps this game close? Well, you think about it, you know, we're already factoring in pretty much full run from these guys. So it's not like there's minute upside based on Detroit keeping it close. I mean, if you want to get to overtime, that's something else. But again, for GPP type plays, you know, Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, guys like that, they're not going to be that real high, not the cover off the ball ceiling play as far as I'm concerned for GPPs. And it's an important difference between something like this and the Giannis situation yesterday, where they were projecting blowouts into the minutes, where here they're just not. So you have to kind of honor the fact that a 13-point spread does create some risk for these high-owned players. On the other side, Detroit. Okay, so we got to look at this. First of all, the easy play, not easy, but the easy one to identify is Andre Drummond. Okay, he's projecting to be a very, very well-projected player tonight. And I would say one of the top, probably tied for, there are like 5 guys that are kind of tied for the best kind of combination of raw points and value, and he's one of them. However, same type of thing. I mean, he's projected to have, you know, already to be 36 minutes, and I don't think there's a lot of upside from that. Let's put it that way. And I only think there's downside from those minutes. So as far as GPP type plays, I don't think that he's going to be that kind of, you know, high upside from his projections type of dude that I'm going to put in the GPP. So the combination of those two things. So if I have neither guys from Detroit nor the Clippers that have that kind of profile, I really don't believe that stacking the game is, even though it's a late game and it's, you know, it's high enough total, which I like, but I don't think the combination of these things is good enough to make this a stackable game. So what can you do with some of these guys? Does that mean you can't play Drummond? No. Oh, I gotta pause this for a second. Sorry about that. So can you play those guys? Yeah, but I think, again, you can only play them as kind of one of those plays to hold your lineup together if you find a good upside stack or good upside plays elsewhere. Now, on the Detroit side, aside from Drummond, there are a couple of guys you got to think about. So Christian Wood is projecting to be a pretty decent value today. And this is a couple of days after he, let's say, busted? I wouldn't say he busted. I mean, he was really heavy chalk. And let's just put it this way. It was an interesting sweat to get there. I mean, he only played like 11 minutes in the first half. And people were really, really on tilt. And he did get there in the second half somewhat. So he did fine. And, you know, he's projected to be a pretty good value. Not great, but not bad. And, again, it depends on the ownership. If he's going to be real chalk again, oh, my God, he's going to be 30% again. I don't believe that's the case. There's no way they're going to run him back at 30% ownership after he gave everybody a heart attack last time. But if they do, 30% again, this is not my thing. You know, and we talk about this several times. When it comes to these chalk these chalk guys, I prefer the guys that are going to, I'm going to do it right this time, have the ball in their hands more often and not subject themselves to foul risk and coaches' decisions like, oh, I feel like going small or whatever it is. So Christian Wood is just not the type of guy I'm going to eat as chalk at 30%, especially on a huge slate like this. Another guy, which was interesting, was Bruce Brown. Now, Bruce Brown was showing up to be kind of an interesting value, but he just kind of came up on the injury report. Let's just take a quick look at this. He's now listed as questionable. And all these illnesses, I don't know what's going on in this world nowadays. But so if he plays, and again, I'm kind of now in this mood where, you know, you have big slates and guys are questionable either because of injuries or illness and they play and they're chalky. I'm just kind of not interested. So if he ends up being chalky and plays, I'm probably not going to be too interested in this. If he doesn't play, then you have stuff like Derrick Rose might get more minutes, or maybe Tim Frazier, God help us, he might get more minutes. But in a weird way, I would rather have Tim Frazier chalk than Christian Wood chalks because for the same reason. I mean, he's going to be a point guard at least. At least he's going to be able to get some random assists and maybe a random steal nowadays. He's going to be in control of his usage in some way. So now again, I don't think he's going to be an incredible play, but if in fact Brown is out, I'll certainly include him as one of my possible values. Like for example, we're going to get to another kind of chalky point guard backup later, and we're going to compare him. Maybe Tim Frazier might be a better play than him at significantly lower ownership. But again, if Bruce Brown is out and Tim Frazier is then chalky, then again you have to make that, you know, have to strike that balance. So overall, in this Detroit Clipper game, again, it's not an exciting game for me as far as making a core part of what I'm doing. And these one-offs are just not all that exciting. I mean, they're fine. I mean, look, I'm not going to argue with Andre Drummond or Kawhi or Paul George at these prices in general, but you know, again, I don't think they're going to be on the winning lineup unless they are coupled with some real high upside guys. Okay. All right. So we're going to resign. We're going to do it this way, right? All right. So Memphis, Sacramento. This actually is the beginning of the builds that I'm going to end up with probably. Let's kind of take a look at this. So first of all, it's a high-ish total. Yeah, 225 total and a close spread. So it is definitely the type of game I'd want to stack. And the good news is, from the Sacramento side, is there are 3 plays, actually 2.5 plays, call them 3, that are all kind of standing out as pretty decent values. I mean, again, not as great as those Paul George, Kawhi Leonard's, whatever, but you know, they have really good upside, and these are the types of guys I like to play in stacks, and it's kind of, they're going to be, you know, much lower owned, and they're going to be De'Aaron Fox and or Buddy Hield, okay, these two. And if you want, you can go down to Bjelica, but these are the 2 main guys, is Fox and Hield. And what's cool about these guys are going to be, you know, much lower owned than some of these other guys. So if these guys are like 10% or something like that, these guys would be somebody I really want to look at. Now, what would be great, as I said, is if I could find low-owned Memphis guys also that project really well. So here's the problem. The problem is that while none of these guys are going to be highly owned on Memphis, they all project for crap, okay? I mean, literally all of them. So you're now kind of left with this conundrum. Is it worth giving up some, what I've been liking to call projection integrity, right, to get that stack build, to get that correlation build? And the answer is, unfortunately, you're not going to like this, but it just kind of depends on the way the rest of the slate plays out. But let's just say this, is that if I were going to play this stack, and again, it's not perfect, maybe it works out to be okay, I would just try to find the point guard, see if he's good enough. Like Ja Morant, I mean, he has been just, I don't say miserable, but really uninspiring the last month or so. He does project the best value of a bunch of really crappy alternatives. So if I were going to stack this game, I would probably throw in Morant I don't know if I would go up to Valanciunas at his price. I mean, he's projecting so far away from where I'd want him. I got this weird feeling that I'm going to end up not doing a full stack here. Because it's just the Memphis guys are just so unpredictable and just blase in terms of projections that I don't think I'm going to go that way. But I'm going to put these two guys in, Fox and Hield, to remind me of the types of guys that I'm looking for because they do project well. They have high upside. They correlate pretty well with one another. You know, the point guard giving it to the shooting guard, whatever. And they're going to be low owned. So let's just hold on to these guys for a while. So Brooklyn and Dallas, the main bit of news is that, as at least of this taping, so to speak, showing my age here, is that what's his name? Kristaps was ruled out. So Luke is back in. He's probable. I'm sure he's playing, and he is 12,000 on DraftKings. Now, the first thing I would say, again, this is my cynicism coming out, is that because he's 12,000, I think he's going to be far lower owned than he would if he were 11.9. It's just the way human nature works, all right? It's just going to be that way. So I think there is inherent good value at 12K. Again, I can't prove that. It just makes a little sense to me. So if, in fact, he works out to be someone I could put in, I do think that his ownership is going to be lower than it otherwise would be for an extra $100. So looking at his ownership, he is projected to be only about 10% owned. And, you know, I wouldn't just automatically dismiss him. Now, you're not going to be able to make some of those middling build lineups, which this slate might end up demanding. I would say demanding, but calling for if you play Luka. But I am certainly not going to be the one to tell you not to play Luka. All right, Kristaps was without him on the court. I mean, you can look it up, but Luka just has insane usage, which is why he's projecting through the freaking roof. He's projecting 67 median or 65 median, which means, I mean, he's got, even though he's projecting 37 minutes, I mean, he's got, maybe he doesn't have a lot of minute upside from there, but, you know, he just has just typical, you know, Luka upside from there. So he could end up breaking the slate at 10% ownership. It's going to be hard to do it with the 15-game slate and a lot of good middling ideas, but I'm certainly not going to say to cross them off the player pool. The three other guys that are going to be in play, I think 4, maybe 5, for Dallas, I just want to go over real quick, is Jalen Brunson at the beginning of the day was projected to be one of the highest owned players on the board. Right now, when I look at him, he's still showing to be about 35% owned. I just don't think that's going to hold. There's just too many other options for people to go to a 35% Jalen Brunson. But nonetheless, right now he's projecting to be that highly owned. And I will tell you right now, and again, to learn from other slates, if somebody that's projecting like this is 35% owned, I mean, you just have to throw him out. I don't want to say throw him out, but at least go way, way under. Now, again, you might think that kind of flies in the face of what I said. You know, when it comes to these chalk value guys, you'd rather the guy have the ball in his hands. Well, yeah, that's technically true, but, you know, a good amount of Jalen Brunson's usage, his minutes are going to be shared by Luka. And best of luck to you, sir, if you're going to want to get any usage with Luka on the court. It's just not going to happen. So while he might be a good kind of points per dollar type play that, you know, might get you there just because he's on the court, he certainly also is the type of guy that's going to open up other things for you. So I certainly think you can justify playing him for that reason, but don't expect him to get 30 points and be a main part of your upside. Let's put it that way. So for me, 35%, I'm going to find someone better. Not even better, but someone that's hopefully just as good or a little more expensive. But again, you know, he is projecting to be okay, but just really highly owned. The other guy in the same game who is projecting very similarly is from a value perspective is going to be Delon Wright. And try him if you want. I mean, let's look at the ownership on him if you want to go for value for him as opposed to who did I say? Jalen Brunson. I mean, he's not projecting to have that much ownership. I think will have to catch some eventually as the day goes on. But at lower ownership than Jalen Brunson, I would certainly try him instead. Some people are going to go back to Maxi Kleber, who benefited from Kristaps being out the other day. He's projecting to be not that great a play, though. So if he comes in with some ownership, he's another guy I probably would just end up fading. So again, like hopefully when you watch these, you see that you don't want to fall in love with any play. Like any play is just a function of his ownership, how he fits with the rest of your lineups, how he fits the rest of your builds, and don't just fall in love with a particular type of play because it's all relative to everybody else on the slate. So like Kleber for now, I mean, he just doesn't project all that great, and I don't need a guy like this in my lineup, so I don't know why I would make an excuse to bump him as far as his projections go. Another guy who you might want to try if you want to pivot off of Jalen Brunson with the same idea is you could try Seth Curry. Okay, so Seth Curry is projecting to be a worse value than Delon Wright and Jalen Brunson, but at least we've seen that he has some upside, right? Like he gets going, he's going to just keep shooting, and he has a shot. You know what I mean? Seth Curry is just much less shy about jacking a shot when Luke is on the court, where Jalen Brunson would be more inclined to just kind of pass the ball up. So Seth Curry might be an okay pivot if you wanted to go that route. And then there's always Boban. I mean, he has a minute down. He has a minute floor of 0 and a minute upside of about 15. But if he plays, I mean, he could get you 20, 25 fantasy points maybe. I'm not doing it, but just too big a slate for me to mess around with that. But you're going to hear a little bit about that today. And if you take a shot with it, the good thing about taking a shot with Boban is that you then don't have to worry about ownership in the rest of your spots, because he's going to be, he's going to be very low owned and he has a lot of upside. So if you play him, then you could play your more conservative, like Kawhis and Paul Georges and things like that. That would be a benefit of playing Boban, but I don't know if I'm going to do it. I'm a little bored with going straight this way, so let's go jump to Denver, Indiana, okay, at the beginning. All right. So Denver, Indiana, it has the benefit of being a close spread, but the total's not that great, so I don't imagine these guys are going to project to be that tremendous values. So the good news is we did have a bit of news that Malcolm Brogdon is out. It's good because there are two guys that you could go to for value here, and they're not going to be as highly owned as some of the other guys that we spoke about. So first of all, Domantas Sabonis looks to be, as usual, just kind of okay. Doesn't look to be any great shakes. You can play him, but again, he's going to be one of those conservative type plays. But the two guys who are going to benefit from Brogdon being out is most obviously is going to be Aaron Holiday, because he's probably going to get the start and play a bunch of minutes like he always has with him out. And you'll see that he always seems to have a good game. His low score since he started is 26 points. No, he had a third, 22, 24. So they've moved his price up to 5,700, but even so, his projection looks to be kind of okay. I mean, not great, but okay. The other guy that is going to be much less looked at, I would think, is going to be T.J. McConnell. So T.J. McConnell, again, he is projecting to be a little bit better than Holiday based on based on a value basis. And I think he's going to be lower owned. Let's take a look at it real quick. Again, this is not definitive, and this could be, this is all open to change. But I mean, he actually, he is showing to be about 15%. But that was with Brogdon even still in. I don't know. Maybe he will be popular in McConnell. But I'd like to think that if Brunson is going to get all that ownership, then this would be a really, really good pivot. But then again, he's an early game, so maybe he'll take ownership too. You got to watch for this. So again, I love him at 5%. I'll fade him completely at 40, and at 15, I'll probably play a little. Okay, let's put it that way. I don't think I'm going to go down to Miles Turner and Justin Holiday. These are the next guys kind of on the value list. I mean, you could play these guys, but these are, again, going to be your kind of guys to fill in along the way. Like Miles Turner, I think, is actually, I was about to say he's kind of a good upside type play. Problem is that he likes to get those blocks. I don't know, like the game against Jokic, is he going to be able to leave Jokic to get blocks? I don't know. So I'll consider Miles Turner just kind of like a fringe play. How about that? Now, so again, with nothing that great on the Indiana side, I'm really not expecting there to be much of a great stacking situation. Let's just take a look for the hell of it. And yeah, Denver, just as you might imagine, as usual, Jokic projects to be blah. And the next guy on the list is Jamal Murray, who projects just to be okay, and he's very tilting. So for me, it doesn't look like this is a game I'm going to have a lot of interest in. Normally, on a short slate, I might try to do something like, run some Jamal Murray with somebody from Indiana, but I don't know if I'm going to make that work tonight. I just don't think these guys project well enough, and the upside is great enough to make that a core of what I want to do. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't know if Jamal Murray is going to make a one-off either. He certainly is an upside guy. So if I need a 6,500 upside guy, maybe I'll go to him. But it's definitely on the fishy side. Want to move ahead? Let's move ahead. So Charlotte and Cleveland, again, kind of a lowest total, but kind of an interest, kind of a close spread. So if you had a bunch of guys that were popping, I could try to stack it. But what I'm seeing is, first on the Cleveland side, again, pretty unappealing stuff. You got Kevin Love looks okay, I suppose. And you see, this is kind of a theme throughout this. Is it's kind of just okay guys. So if you're going to get just okay, you want to get like upside. So Love is okay. Tristan Thompson's okay, I suppose. Nobody else really is popping to be that good on Cleveland. I'm not going back to Kevin Porter or Osman. Oh, Osman was so good for us the other day. Oh, we were so on that one. Sexton, nah. So on the Charlotte side, though, again, this is no surprise, but the two guys that look to be the best are Devontae Graham, who's looking to be, kind of a decently projected guy, and Rozier a little worse so. So the thing is that Devontae Graham, he's projected to be okay, and he's that upside type of player, right? The guy who's not going to be shy, who's going to be self-correlating. The more shots he makes, the more he's going to take. And the standard deviation of his results is wide enough such that, his 8,200 median is different than, for example, Sabonis's 8,400 median, right? So, even though Sabonis projects to have an 8,400 median projection, 84 median projection, even though he projects to have a similar median to Devontae Graham, I mean, what are the chances that, Sabonis is going to hit for 60? I mean, almost zero, right? But Graham has that possibility. I mean, Cleveland's defense is atrocious, especially against guards. So he has that kind of upside. He certainly has downside down to 30. You know what I mean? So, but in a GPP, these are the kind of guys that you do want to get. Now, it would be great if he were both low owned and I could stack him on the other side, right? The stacking situation is kind of grim, but from an ownership perspective, I mean, 5%? Is that real? You know what I mean? So if I can get a guy that's 5% whose median projection is not the worst, okay, and he has upside. I mean, he's a guy that I definitely want to kind of put in here. So what you see happening here is I have three really, in my opinion, kind of strong type plays in that they're not the greatest projecting players in the world, but they're high upside kind of scoring type players who are going to be low owned. So this is working out to be kind of an interesting little slate. Do I have to run it back with someone like Kevin Love or Sexton or something like that? I don't even think I have to. I don't think I really gain that much considering that Love's projection is not that great. I don't think I need to do that, okay? I'd like to, but I don't think I have to. So we're kind of squeezed towards the middle. Want to go Toronto, Miami first? Or, let's go here first. We did Brooklyn, Dallas. Let's go back to Oklahoma City and San Antonio. The good news is that I'm not going to be spending all that much time on this game, I think. So first of all, it is a close spread, I think. Yep. So it does have that overtime big, and the total's about 220 or something like that. So it's not terrible, but I'm imagining that you're not going to see anybody popping as such a great value, just because there's no injuries and these guys spread their assets around pretty well. And when I'm looking at it, that's definitely the case. So from the San Antonio side, really nobody's projecting to be such a great value here. DeRozan, Murray, I mean, honestly, none of them. And likewise, on the other side, let me look at this. I mean, this is like a perfect example of who not to play. So, like, the best of the given alternatives here is going to be Danilo Gallinari. And, again, he's just not that guy. You know what I mean? And that's the best way I can describe it without just reducing him to a data point, is that the standard deviation of his results is not wide enough to make him just a high upside GPP winning type of play. If he kind of fit in the rest of my lineup and he projected well, he's the profile of someone that can kind of keep a lineup together, but he's not going to win me anything. Chris Paul has been kind of a little bit volatile, so maybe he'd be the one I would use from Oklahoma City, but he's not projecting well at all. So again, if you put a gun to my head and say just pick somebody from Oklahoma City, San Antonio, maybe I would take, Chris Paul, but or Dennis Schroeder as usual. I mean, he's another guy that kind of just gets there, and I would say gets there, that he either just explodes or it doesn't do much. But aside from that, I think the game's almost kind of a cross-up. All right, so moving towards the middle is Miami, Toronto. Okay, so kind of a lowish total. Spread's kind of blah. I mean, it's like a 5-6 point spread. So as far as game environment, probably not that great for a stack. But let's just take a look at the projections and see if it's stackable and or if they're good one-offs from here. Toronto, so there's Van Vliet and Lowry. Nothing special, nothing that anybody wouldn't tell you as the top plays for Toronto. And unfortunately, today, as opposed to the last couple of days, they really are not projecting to be that great. And as I've talked about with Lowry before, he's just never that explosion type of guy. He's going to, that's why his team wins. You know what I mean? He manages the offense. He's very stable. He's very consistent, which is great. But for winning GPPs, when you got to beat, what's his name? Luka Doncic 70 points, whatever it is. Like, you can't have too many of these Kyle Lowry safe guys in there. And Van Vliet I would say Van Vliet actually is a little more volatile. I shouldn't even say that. I think him and Lowry are both kind of the same in that they're just kind of okay plays that you had that money left over, you could put him in. But if you think about it, Lowry at 8,200. This is a good example. So let's say you had 8,200 left. And you were between Fred Van Vliet or Devontae Graham. Who would you take between those two? And the answer is that it's a trick question. Right? It really does depend on what you're looking for to fill out that lineup. Like, if you had a chalky, safe-ish type lineup, I would say you take Devontae Graham 100% of the time with that choice. However, if you have a bunch of wild stuff and high upside guys already, then, and especially maybe it was a single entry type tournament, then maybe you would go with Lowry instead. I'm presuming these guys are both not going to be highly owned, right? That would obviously help to separate them. But I think that's a very important thing to think about is, how two similarly projected guys could be just totally different with respect to how they profile, okay? So as far as ownership goes, let me just look really quickly. I would imagine that Lowry wouldn't get too much ownership today. Now, so both these guys are going to be low owned, so they're both good from that perspective. But again, which of these guys fit in your lineup depends on what the rest of your lineup looks like. Okay. So on the Miami side, there are actually two plays that are both very, very strong. And unfortunately, they're probably going to take some ownership, and that's going to be Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Okay. Now, for those of you that have been playing Butler, I mean, it's been very, very tilting for you, I would imagine, right? I mean, as I mentioned the last time he played, he just kind of looks like a baby nowadays. He's bitching about calls. He's whining about everything. He's just not even playing that well. So they just got blown out at home by, who was it, by the Hawks? Who did the Heat just get blown out by at home? Let me take a look at this. Yeah, they got blown. No, not at home. They got blown at Washington, where Washington had no players. Okay. I mean, he got his 40 points, but boy, was it a struggle. Okay. And and that was only 5x for him, and he projected to be so much better than that. However, he does project to be pretty good today. And I guess the good thing is, so it does project him that he's going to be highly owned, or I would say, medium to highly owned. But I have to think that his ownership is going to be a little less than that. I mean, they are playing Toronto, which is kind of a difficult matchup. So I do think that his ownership might be restrained a little bit. So Butler could be a guy that could make these kind of middling builds. But if you see what's happening here, you can't have too many of these 8K guys where you run into problems. But he looks good. And Bam, Bam looks good too. Yeah, he's another 8,100 guy, okay, that projects very well. He projects better than these other guys, for example. He projects much better than Devontae Graham. But he's going to be a little bit higher owned. And obviously it's a different position. But Bam certainly is one of those really, really good plays today whose ownership is fine, maybe 15%, something like that. So, again, I wouldn't stack this game. But, again, I would include Butler and Bam in kind of my one-offs. Now, what type of one-offs are these guys? I do think that these guys are both going to be considered, though, on the safer type of side, okay? Because, Butler does get rebounds, he gets assists, he gets steals, and if he's not shooting, he gets there in other ways. So I do think that his floor is a little bit better than some of these other 8,200 guys that we discussed. And similarly, Bam, I mean, he's just very active. So, he's not a scoring reliant. So he is another guy who I think is kind of safe. I think that he's on a par with, as far as the way his results distribute, with someone like Sabonis, but he just actually projects to be much better than Sabonis today. Okay? So the last two games I actually think are very, very interesting. First one being Utah against Chicago. So it's a low total game, about 210, but it's a close enough spread where, again, you could look to stack some of these things if it works out. And, oh, my goodness. So first guy that stands out as another kind of like good but not great play is going to be our old favorite. It's going to be Zach LaVine, okay? And as we've spoken about, he's a guy who has enormous upside. He fires the ball up when he's in the mood, and he always closes, and he always has the ball in his hands during closing time. So it's, your perfect GPP type play, even more perfect in that he's never highly owned, just ever. And today I don't think it's going to be an exception because, you know what? In addition to the fact he doesn't project all that great, I mean, he projects fine. He projects as well as, some of these guys we've spoken about. But he's also has that Utah matchup, which is just, as good as Utah is defensively, it still also carries that cachet of being even better than they are. So I think LaVine is just a fantastic play in this with what we're trying to accomplish here, to get a high upside guy who's not going to be highly owned. Now, again, if there are other guys on this team that you can play and guys to run it back with, that's even better. But so here's a good example. So Chicago, the next best projected guy here is going to be Chris Dunn. And Chris Dunn is, in the way I look at things, is just the opposite of the GPP play, okay? He's a guy who I think he's a great player. I want him on my team. He's very smart, but he's just not going to take a lot of chances. He's going to settle for that mid-range shot, not going to take a lot of threes. He's not going to try to, make that extra, that difficult pass or whatever it is. He's nice and steady. And he's certainly someone I will include in a lineup that has other upside in it. So will I include him in a stack with Levine? I'd be less worried about that than, let's say I had a guy that needed to get shots off in this game, because I don't think that Dunn's usage or Dunn's production is going to be affected by Levine in any way. So in a weird way, he actually might work. Let's put him in here for now. Well, we're running out of guards here. This is the problem. See, this is why DraftKings is so cool. So what you could do if you wanted to is you could put Hield in small forward and Dunn in small forward, and then you could move one of these guys to shooting guard. So that's why you could do whatever you want with DraftKings, which makes it hard. So let's first look at the Utah side, because obviously they're low on Utah guys. Then we're freaking geniuses. And you want to know something? I mean, these guys are not that bad. You know, Donovan Mitchell is projecting to be okay. Again, another 8,100 guy. He's projecting just like Devonta Graham. Okay. Then you have Gobert as a center. He's 8,900. I mean, I don't know if I want to go that route. I don't know what kind of – it's going to be difficult to get a big, high-scoring game with Gobert playing good defense and getting blocks and rebounds and stuff like that. So I don't know if he's going to be in there, but I'll think about it. But you use Mitchell, and then you have your other two high-upside guys, which are going to be Ingles and Bogdanovich. And what I would do, as I normally do, is I would just do either Mitchell with max one of the two of them, right? So you could certainly do something in this game with Levine. Let's do this. We're going to build this. We're not going to necessarily end up this way, but let's go back to, we're going to put Hield over here, and then we'll put Levine back over here in this pile here. And then instead of Graham, we'll put in, who did I say, Mitchell? And then we'll pick our favorite between, what's his name, Ingles and Bojan. Let's put in, you want to make it more difficult on ourselves? Well, you know what? Because Bojan is power forward eligible, let's put him in here. And now what you have is you have these two sack guys together, and you have a Utah kind of stack with Levine and these two guys. And you still, you know, you're going to have to find value, but we've gone over a couple of guys already that we could put in here. And again, if you don't like this, you could put Ingles in, and you got something. Okay. As a matter of fact, this, you know, it'd be ridiculous to think the Utah-Chicago game would be the most appealing game. Again, it's not that great, but I think this is kind of interesting at no ownership to go this route. This could be fun. All right. The other guy in Utah, again, I just want to keep pointing him out, and we've been on him every game since he's been over, is Jordan Clarkson, right? And what I said, and I'm going to keep saying, is that they hired him to shoot. When he gets in the game, he's going to be firing, right? And there you have it. 13 shots, 12 shots, all in 25 minutes or so. And since he's been there, he, you know, his first game out, he shot the ball a lot, didn't really do anything. And then he had 27 and 28 points at very, very low salary. We were able to get there at 8X or so, or 7X or so in both these games. Now they moved him up to 5K, so it becomes a little less attractive. So I'm probably not going to go there today. All right. So, and the other one, again, this is just not to brag, but the other guy we nailed the other day was Kobe White. But again, for those people that want to point chase, they'll see he got 34 at 3,800 in his last game. But again, that was partially because we were trying to find a guy that was going to shoot threes against Milwaukee. So, and because we were really looking for a guy to pivot off the 3,900. Who was it? Who was 3,900 that we were trying to pivot off on the 30th of December? I don't remember, but there was someone at 3,900. Maybe it was Christian Wood, actually, that we were trying to pivot off of. Forget who it was, but whoever it was didn't do all that great. Kobe White definitely outscored them. So, but on today like this, where, you know, you're not looking for that same type of deal, you don't have to go to Kobe White, especially when you want to use Zach LaVine. I mean, you don't want someone that's going to take shots. Right? So the last game, and I just did this by accident, is could be the most, I don't say interesting, but the game that's most driven by the news because with respect to Golden State, Russell out, Bullock Holstein out again, I presume. And from the Minnesota side, Cat has been basically out for the past couple of weeks. They're still listing him as questionable. I'm operating the assumption that he is still out. If he's in, then actually makes my life a little easier because some of these guys just become unplayable after that. And the other guy that they have announced as questionable as opposed to out is Andrew Wiggins. And that, unfortunately, is going to be something you have to watch for. Because if he is out, then what ends up happening is all of these Minnesota value guys that have been that way remain good plays from a projection standpoint, yet remain extremely chalky, and yet also carry a decent amount of risk in my world because they just played a ridiculous game against Milwaukee as a 20-point underdog, played their asses off, and now have to do a back-to-back, okay? And I don't care what anybody says, all right? That is not factored into the projections. Right? The fact that they had to lay all of their effort out on the line and an incredibly, probably their best performance of the season, given who they had, who they're playing against, to come right back the next day and play is just, you're just not going to, as a human being, be able to match that effort. You just can't. And I just don't believe that the projection systems account for that. I just don't. You could say that, you're being narrative driven or whatever. Again, maybe because I'm, as old as I am, I've just seen too much in life and too much in human nature. It's just, I'm just not going to feel as though that their projections accurately reflect their chances of achieving those ceilings and putting forth the effort necessary to reach those numbers. With that said, I'm going to operate for the now under the assumption that Towns is out and that Wiggins is out, just to tell you the guys to look for, and that's going to be Napier again, Culver again, who was, oh my God, how good was he yesterday? He dunked over Robin Lopez, and Robin Lopez went on complete tilt. And Shabazz Napier, Robert Covington, who is, I think, the safer of them, just because he's always active and he always gets rebounds and gets a couple of steals, and he doesn't always rely on his scoring. So these are like the three guys, Covington, Culver, and Napier, to look at. Jang is okay. That's assuming that Wiggins is out. However, again, depending on ownership, I really don't think that those guys are must plays, okay? I think that, the coach might spread the minutes out. I just don't feel as though these guys are such locks, all right? Am I going to play them? Full disclosure, yeah, I'll probably end up playing them, right? But if I play them, it's going to be not expecting them to win me anything. It's going to be just kind of like to give me the salary to hold the rest of my lineup together, okay? Am I really looking for Culver at this point to get 35 on a back-to-back? I don't think so. Am I looking for Napier to get 35 on a back-to-back? I don't think so. Covington, he needs 35 really on a back-to-back. I guess I trust him more than the other guys, but yet then again, Napier's going to have the ball in his hands more often. So I don't know. I think they're all fine, but, they're certainly kind of top-rated values. But, again, in a similar way that I don't think these Brunson guys are such tremendous values either, I don't feel in a big hurry to play any of these guys. Let's put it that way. On the Golden State side, again, considering that the situation is so up in the air with the Minnesota guys, I don't even want to think about whether I want to stack this game or not. But I think that if, in fact, Wiggins and Cat are out, and all these guys end up being chalky, I don't think I'm going to end up going to them in a stack, okay? Just because, like I said, I don't want to have chalky stacks. Now, it could be that sometimes if these guys are so cheap, I could use enough of them where I could then put in these high upside guys alongside. But I don't know. On the Golden State side, Marquise Chris chalk again. He's projecting to be just okay. I'm just telling you. Like, for example, the Minnesota guys are projecting, assuming Wiggins is out. Like Covington, for example, is projecting to be a much, much better play than Marquise Chris. He just is. And like Alex Burks looks okay, but I will tell you, assuming that, again, that all those guys are out for Minnesota, Covington, for example, is just much better. So, again, watch your ownerships on the Golden State guys also, because I have a feeling that Burks is going to become popular and Chris is going to become popular. Let's take a look real quick. Let me just see if there's any kind of ownership here on Golden State. Actually, not that bad. I mean, Marquise Chris 25%. No thanks. Just no thanks. And even Burks at 15%. Just no thanks. I would rather take a shot at Draymond. He's not projecting that great. But again, he's always got that Draymond upside. But I tell you, in a lineup like this, when you have kind of like low-owned, high-volume shooters, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much more, variance and upside I kind of want. I almost want those kind of safer, I almost want those safer Brunson-type plays in lineups like this. Seems kind of crazy, right? And I almost want, like, for example, in a lineup like this, can I get Mitchell as a forward? That would be nice. Okay, either of these guys a forward? No. What I was going to say is if I could get in Dunn, for example, like this is where I'd play someone like that. Like someone like, ooh, he's a forward. Oh, my God, how is he a forward? I'm a genius, right? So you could put him in here, and then you could pick your favorite of those value guys, and you could still play like a decent player. So let's say that Wiggins is out, and then you could go and you could play like Covington. Was there a 3,700 guy we could use at center that we thought about before? No, not really. So it definitely does require a little bit of work. Could you play now? Could you play Christian Wood? Could you do that? Now is where you might be able to get away with playing Christian Wood. Okay, you might be able to eat a little bit of chalk there. Okay, and then if you want, oh my God, if you want to have some fun, you could finish it up with something like Seth Curry. And he's, again, I think this is a kind of a really low-owned lineup here. Maybe too low-owned, but we're gonna try this just in case. I wouldn't want this to win and us to not have it. Let's put it that way. So was that it for the Golden State guys? Well, there's Damian Lee, who looks to be okay. Eric Pascal would be a real flyer if you want to try him. They gave him no minutes in his last game. Glenn Robinson, I wouldn't point chase. Kai Bowman, I don't know. So I think this Golden State-Minnesota game is going to get a lot of ownership, especially if Wiggins is out. And I wouldn't go nuts with it. I know you're going to hear a lot of people trying to stack this game, but think about it for a second. I mean, it is only a 213 total, right? Which makes it, maybe the fifth or sixth highest total on the day. So why would this be the chalky stack at such a low total? You'd have to think it's because all these values are so strong. And while the Minnesota values look pretty okay, the Golden State guys don't look that great. So it's and I think that back-to-back risk off that emotional game is I think it's worth something. Is it worth something if they were 5% owned? No, I would say ignore it. Right? But because they are, they're going to be chalky, I think that you could fade them. Now, if Wiggins plays, you're just going to have to just relook at your stuff. I think that if Wiggins plays the whole game, Minnesota guys just, I don't want to say become unplayable, but they just become much less valuable. Let's put it that way. However, it might actually reduce their ownership a little bit. So what do you have? Let's just say that Wiggins plays. What do you do with a guy like Covington? Well, he's not going to project as well, yet he's going to have lower ownership. Probably would end up not playing him, but again, these are the types of things that you have to balance out. I might play him, again, in a higher upside lineup where I need somebody to just not do much, but just not get killed. All right, so I think that this slate is going to be a lot of fun, all right? You'll see this build has no Luka. And you can make a totally different build with Luka, but you know what you give up when you play Luka? Well, the first thing you have to give up is probably a decent amount of these kind of 8,000 guys or 7,000 guys even. Then you're going to have to rely on guys like Brunson and these other 3,400 guys or these 4,000 guys to kind of keep your lineup together and really hope that Luka goes off. I think that the combination of these middling guys, I think this looks so cool. You know what I mean? And again, it's like I always say about football. Whenever you make a football lineup, NFL, you're just convinced it's going to win. And whenever you make a baseball lineup, for me, I'm always convinced I have no chance. Basketball, you're really supposed to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I guess this type of thing could make me feel enough uncomfortable. But I do know this, is that I do visualize like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to look at 5, 6, 7 possible ceilings out of this group. And Chris Dunn, right? So with that said, I'm sure that Chris Dunn's going to score 50, and the rest of these guys are going to combine for 100 points between them. All right, so I know I've been promising this for days now, but Bobby is going to be back soon. He's feigning, what's he feigning today? He's feigning internet issues. So we'll see about that. Hopefully he comes back soon, but happy to hold down the fort, and let's get there.